I think I found a dinosaur. Those were the words of Joe Davis. It is the largest and most complete skeleton of its kind ever found in the UK.
I looked down and just saw this series of ridges in the mud. Hang on, that looks different. There's something there that's different.
It had not been discovered before because it's under ice. At the end of the Ice Age, Greenland was one area which never lost its ice cap.
Up first is the cracked cap. A massive piece of Greenland's ice cap just broke off from the ice sheet, and researchers are seriously concerned. The glacier is some 110 square kilometers in size, making it one of the most significant single losses of ice mass in Arctic history. To scientists, ecologists, and people who care about having an environment to live in, this is often considered pretty bad. But nations around the world and the corporations within them are seeing nothing but dollar signs. See, unlike the Antarctic, the Arctic is not a single impassable continent. It's an ice cap stretching down over several archipelagos and land masses. For centuries, the Arctic has been nigh on impassable, as the ice is simply too thick and dangerous. But as the ice melts and the equator becomes unbearably hot, this ice will open up all sorts of new passageways through the Arctic. Claims over Arctic waterways are already being heavily sought as America, Russia, Canada, Norway, Denmark, and Finland jockey for position over who gets to control these potentially highly profitable trade routes. Next is the oldest DNA. A group of Danish researchers in Greenland made an incredible discovery, finding the oldest DNA ever. This fleck of genetic material was determined to be 2 million years old. That outstrips the previously oldest known DNA by 1 million years. The known history of life stretches back hundreds of millions of years, but only fossils, no DNA, can be recovered from that far back. This isn't just some shred of DNA either, but an actual readable genetic code, giving unparalleled insight into ancient biology. The researchers went into an area of Greenland where they were surrounded by 2-million-year-old mounds of dirt, and then began taking core samples. There were no fossils or remnants of bone, but by testing the soil, they were able to identify some actual strands of DNA. The special factor in Greenland, which allows DNA to survive for so long, are both the cold and minerals in the soil, which actually bind to the DNA and help to preserve it within the soil. It's unknown exactly where this DNA came from, but likely from one of any number of sources, as living creatures are shedding DNA constantly. Some of this, likely from excrement, was preserved inside the soil for 2 million years to eventually be discovered by these Danish researchers. Next is the microcontinent. It's estimated only 5% of the ocean has been observed, but that number is rapidly growing as scientists continue mapping the seafloor and making new discoveries. For instance, it was just recently discovered that there is in fact a microcontinent between Greenland and Canada, as a result of Greenland and Canada splitting apart, leading to the formation of the Davis Strait. This microcontinent began to be formed from the left-behind tectonic plate, now known as the Davis Strait microcontinent. This seems to indicate that tectonic plates are not solid masses, but can in fact fuse, split, and calve to form entirely new continents. Now, this isn't quite a full continent, in fact it's still a proto-microcontinent, but in another few million years this could very well become its own independent tectonic plate, influencing our world in as of yet unknown ways. Now, we won't be around to see it, and the formation has already been ongoing for 30 to 60 million years, but it is fascinating to understand that the world around us is continuing to change, that there is no end of history, and even if we're all gone, the fascinating tectonic movements of plates will continue on the Earth's crust. Next are new Greenland bears. Researchers were tasked with conducting a census and analysis of the polar bear population of Greenland, a population that is increasingly under threat. They would discover something totally different from their expectations though. Instead of the assumed single amorphous population covering the entire eastern coastline, it actually turns out there are two distinct and discrete polar bear populations in Greenland. The northeastern population has always been the most studied and most observed, as they're closest to human settlements, and it was assumed that they were emblematic of bears everywhere on on the landmass, but this is not so. There's a southeastern population of bears that live among the mountainous and dangerous fjords in the south. This area is highly remote and heavily isolated, with no human habitation existing in the area, which of course made investigation and research quite difficult, but not impossible. So researchers spent several months tracking and even tagging polar bears in this harsh environment. Shockingly, there were quite high densities of polar bears in the fjords, something which truly surprised the researchers as they did not expect such a healthy and robust population. After years of study, it was eventually observed that these bears hunted differently than the others, and almost never actually went out onto the sea ice, the traditional hunting ground of polar bears. This is because their sea ice is simply so fragmented and dangerous that it's no longer a viable environment for them to hunt within. These bears are a distinct population and likely haven't genetically mingled with the northern population for well over 200 years. Given enough time, these bears could well become their very own species. Next is the ice melange. Ice melt is a concerning trend in the world's climate, as melting ice raises sea levels and releases even more CO2, worsening the greenhouse effect and impacting ocean currents as well as coastlines and ecosystems throughout the world. But scientists just discovered a rather concerning addition to the threat. It turns out significantly more Arctic ice sheet, especially around Greenland, has melted than we thought. In fact, it's shed about a fifth more of its ice mass in the last 4 decades than scientists thought it had. This is seriously concerning, as it seems to indicate the issue is already significantly worse than we had believed, and we believed it to be near catastrophic already. Many are saying the Arctic ice sheet is now beyond saving, and the best we can hope for is to mitigate the potential devastation and hold on for the ride. Of 207 glaciers studied in the report, 179 of them experienced a significant reduction in size since 1985. Most of this ice loss actually comes from below the water level, where it's harder to track and where warm water currents can carve up the glacier. The rate of glacier calving from the ice sheet has also increased significantly. And finally is an ancient tundra. Researchers spent weeks making their way to a buried mountain, then proceeded to carve through 2 miles of ice sheet before getting down to the dirt below. Once they got there, they were stunned to discover several fascinating fossils from a bygone age where the ice sheet around Greenland had actually melted and exposed the soil beneath, leading to a flourishing tundra ecosystem. But as the ancient ice melted, it also raised the sea level, meaning only the tallest points of Greenland were left above water, making it almost a sort of archipelago. They found some fossilized mosses and other fungi, as well as Arctic willow, but even more interestingly, they discovered an insect's leg and a compound eye, giving an excellent view into the small creatures in the ancient Greenland landmass. However, this has raised a lot of fears that a similar melting of the ice could lead to the same ecosystem. Now, to be fair, in 2,000 years, the ecosystem would recover and diversify beautifully, but that doesn't really make the people living along the coastline feel any better about losing their homes.
And we are kicking things off with the 3,000-year-old arrow. This is a super recent discovery, just happened back in September. A glacial archaeologist named Espen Finstad was hiking through the Jotunheim Mountains in eastern Norway when he came across a wooden arrow. It was so well preserved that to the naked eye, it would probably look brand new. It even still had feathers on it. But Finstad estimated that this arrow was actually around 3,000 years old. He later determined it was likely used by a hunter in the late Stone Age to early Bronze Age. Finstad stated, "What makes the arrow so impressive is its preservation. Though it is broken into 3 parts, the arrow remains attached to the shaft, as do the feathers, known as fletchings, which help to stabilize the arrow's flight path." So this is just one of the many artifacts turning up once frozen under, thick layers of ice, not just in Norway, but in cold climates all around the world as glaciers continue to melt. If you are enjoying our content so far, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to leave your thoughts, your comments, complaints down below. I'll usually read them. At number 9, we have Mummy Juanita. Mummy Juanita, also known as the Ice Maiden or Lady of Ampato, is an exceptionally well-preserved mummy of an Inca girl which was discovered in 1995. The mummy was found on Mount Ampato, a dormant volcano in the Andes Mountains of southern Peru, by anthropologist Johann Reinhard and his team. Mummy Juanita is believed to have lived during the Inca Empire, making her one of the best preserved ancient bodies ever found. She was approximately 12 to 14 years old at the time of her death. The mummy was found at an altitude of about 20,600 feet, and her discovery was kinda accidental. Reinhard and his team were actually on a mission to recover another Inca mummy when they stumbled on her in a crevice. She was wrapped in several layers of colorful textiles and buried with various offerings, including ceramic and metal objects, food items, and small statues. She was probably sacrificed as an offering to the Inca gods. The mummy is currently on display in the Catholic University of Santa Maria's Museum of Andean Sanctuaries in Peru. So get over there immediately. Tap on her glass encasing and tell her Uncle James said hello. First person in the comments to do that will receive a wink emoji from me and a $10 gift certificate to Walden Books. Number 8, the Mammoth Mummy. No, this is not a giant-sized human mummy. That would be pretty awesome. This is pretty awesome too, but it's a mummified woolly mammoth. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists found a well-preserved mammoth in Siberia, later named Yuka. She was a young mammoth, about 6 to 8 years old, and lived around 39,000 years ago. Yuka's body was in really good shape. Its body measured about 2.5 meters in length, and it was remarkably intact, with her trunk, bones, some of her flesh, hair, and even eyes still preserved, making her one of the most well-preserved mammoth specimens ever found. It's pretty incredible to see, not that I've ever seen it in person, but based on pictures and video that I have seen of it, crazy how well preserved it is. Finding a dinosaur in this condition would be absolutely unreal. Anyway, they think she might have fallen into a mud pit or drowned, which helped to preserve her so well. People probably butchered her for meat, as there were cut marks on her bones. Scientists studied her DNA to learn more about mammoths and their connection to modern elephants. Right now, Yuka is currently being held in Moscow. Next up, we have the Greenland Norse textiles. These textiles are a collection of ancient fragments discovered in 1921 in various archaeological sites in Greenland. The textiles provided insights into the types of clothing and weaving techniques of the Norse settlers who lived in Greenland during the medieval period. The sites where these fabrics were found are part of the remnants of Norse settlements in Greenland, which thrived between the 10th and 15th centuries. Fabrics discovered include woolen garments and household items. They were remarkably well preserved due to the cold and dry climate of Greenland, which helped prevent decay. The textiles had a bunch of different weaving patterns, colors, and designs that reflected the skill and artistry of the Norse weavers back in the day. It's interesting to see what their clothing looked like beyond depictions of them in ancient artwork. These fabrics have also been useful in understanding the challenges faced by the Norse settlers in Greenland and how they adapted to the harsh environment. And at number 6, we have the Kostenki 17 artifacts. The Kostenki 17 artifacts were discovered at the Kostenki site in Russia, an archaeological site known for its wealth of Upper Paleolithic finds. The artifacts discovered at the site include bone and antler tools, bone ornaments, and various artifacts made from organic materials. Archaeologists dug up a number of bone and antler tools like spear points, knives, and needles, tools that had been crafted with remarkable precision. They also found ornaments made from bone like beads and pendants. On top of that, there were plenty of hunting tools like projectile points, along with bones of animals that they had hunted. Some other notable discoveries at the site were engraved objects and fragments. These engravings often depict animals in geometric patterns, showcasing the type of artwork they would have made at the time. At our number 5 spot, we have the Siberian Ice Maiden, also known as the Princess of Ukok or the Altai Princess. This is a mummy of a young woman that was discovered in 1993 in the Ukok Plateau of the Altai Mountains in Siberia. The Siberian Ice Maiden was discovered by Russian archaeologist Natalia Polosmak in a tomb on the Ukok Plateau. The site was located at an altitude about 8,200 feet. The mummy is believed to date back to around 500 BC, making her approximately 2,500 years old. The mummy was found in a wooden sarcophagus covered with felt blankets and a cowhide rug. She was dressed in intricately woven garments made of wool and felt that was also adorned with jewelry, earrings, a necklace, various ornaments made of gold and other precious metal, so it's likely she held a high social status within the community. Her burial seemed to have been part of a complex ritual too, which led the archaeologists to believe she could have been a priestess or a noblewoman. Number 4, the Aetheric brown bear. 2019, scientists made a pretty cool discovery in Siberia. A thousands-year-old brown bear carcass preserved in the permafrost. The ancient brown bear carcass was discovered by reindeer herders. It was incredibly well preserved because of the permafrost conditions, which prevented decay. The carcass dates back approximately 3,500 years, placing it in the late Bronze Age. This age estimation was made through radiocarbon dating, a technique used to determine the age of organic materials based on their content of carbon-14 isotopes. Next on the list is Ked Dan Shinichi, which was the name given to a remarkably well-preserved body discovered at the Tachansini-Alaska Provincial Park in British Columbia, Canada. Ked Dan Shinichi was discovered by hunters in the remote wilderness northwestern British Columbia. The body was found partially buried in the ice, surrounded by a variety of artifacts. He was believed to have lived over 550 years ago, around the early 15th century, a member of one of the indigenous tribes that inhabited the region during that time. The body's preservation was due to the glacier ice, which acted as a natural freezer, protecting the remains from decomposition. And along with the body, again, a variety of artifacts were discovered. There was a robe made from animal hides, a spruce root hat, a woven mat, a walking stick, various tools made from stone and bone. The body was then ceremonially reburied in 2000 following traditional rituals and protocols. Coming in at number 2, we have the Landrein Tunic. In 2011, during archaeological excavations in Landrein, Norway, this ancient piece of clothing was discovered. The tunic was a remarkable archaeological find, revealing more information about ancient Norse clothing and textile techniques. The Landrein site in the mountains of Norway was once frequented by travelers during the Roman Iron Age, approximately 300 to 500 AD. Because of the ice and snow in the region, many artifacts, including textiles, have been incredibly well preserved. And the tunic, it's made of wool, dates back to around 230 AD. It's a tunic-style garment with a natural brown color, a simple design. It has a twill weave, a pattern commonly used in textiles in that era. Just think of how much of our clothing, by the way, is going to be left behind after we eventually leave Earth or go extinct, let alone all our other crap. We churn out so much stuff on a constant basis, more so than at any point in history. I think finding stuff from this era is going to be so common in the future that it'll be more of a nuisance rather than a remarkable find. Finally though, taking that number 1 spot is Otzi the Iceman. Now, why is this number 1? I don't know, not really any particular ranking going on here, just a good one to close off with. In September of 1991, hikers Helmut and Erika Simon stumbled upon a well-preserved human corpse high in the Alps near the border of Austria and Italy. Later known as Otzi the Iceman, the 2 hikers saw the remains and actually thought he could have died relatively recently. But no, Otzi was an ancient human who had lived over 5,000 years ago during the late Neolithic period. He was so well preserved because he'd been encased in ice for that thousands and thousands of years. His body was found in the Ötztal Alps. The discovery site was in the Schnalzalval-Sanalis Valley, a region that was once covered by glaciers completely. Scientists discovered that Otzi lived between 3359 and 3105 BCE, making him one of the oldest and most well-preserved naturally mummified humans ever found. He was 5'5" and weighed around 110 pounds. The age at the time of his death was estimated to be around 45 years old. Besides his body, researchers also found a bunch of artifacts and clothing items with him. A copper axe, a quiver of arrows, a bearskin cap, and a coat made of woven grass and hide. Otzi's remains and belongings are currently housed in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. The Cagon. On April 28th of 1974, off the coast of Littleton, New Zealand, a Japanese fishing vessel, the 28th Kamparamaru, was out doing its thing, but this day would be unlike any other. At around 7 p.m., all 28 crew members, including Captain Kimura, spotted something massive in the water. Whatever it was, had a head that stuck out of the water, and even though they could only see the top of whatever this beast was, they could tell it was an absolute monster. The head alone was about 1.5 meters tall. The creature had these giant, spooky eyes on top, and some crew members thought they saw what looked like a second set of eyes, or maybe nostrils, right beneath. The texture was described as either rough and hairy or scaled with spikes. It was a bit like a gigantic spider head mixed with a sea monster. Captain Kimura even sketched the thing, and it later made headlines in the New Zealand Weekly magazine. Nearby, mysterious footprints were found on the beach. This beastie was soon linked to other cryptids in Japanese waters like the giant sea ghost, Umibazu, and the Antarctic Godzilla. More on him in a bit. But the Cagon has to be one of the strangest sea cryptids ever reported. The colossal squid is believed to be the largest squid in terms of sheer mass. We're talking about a creature that can grow up to 39 to 46 feet long, and it's not just long, it's also built like a tank, unlike its more famous cousin, the giant squid, which are pretty incredible already. The colossal squid actually has hooks on its tentacles though, some swiveling, others three-pointed, and those hooks are sharp, designed to hold on to prey with this grip-like vice. The colossal squid's beak is the largest of any known squid, bigger than that of the giant squid, and its eyes are the biggest in the animal kingdom, with one specimen having eyes about 11 inches across. These creatures weren't found to actually exist until 1925, when 2 of its tentacles were found in a sperm whale's stomach. Sightings go way back though, but they were thought of the same way creatures like Nessie are, legends and myths. In 1802, a massive squid was spotted in Tasmania, way before anyone officially recognized the giant squid. Then in 1870, a huge squid carcass washed ashore in New Zealand, with locals calling it a tanewa. More sightings and washed up squid parts continued to pop up in the following decades. By 1924, just a year before the colossal squid was officially identified, another giant squid was spotted near Bluff, New Zealand. We know these colossal squids exist now, but we've never retrieved any massive sized carcasses, just ones on the smaller end of the scale. But somewhere deep in the waters off the coast of Antarctica, there are gargantuan squids, possibly even bigger than our current estimates. The large Antarctic sea mammal, also known as the Antarctic Godzilla. So the story goes that on February 13th of 1958, the Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo was cruising through Antarctica's icy waters when around 7 p.m. the crew spotted something massive in Lutzow Bay. This thing was giant. The captain of the ship would go on to dub the creature the Antarctic Godzilla because to him it looked a lot like Godzilla. Now, I love my giant monster movies, Mothra, Cagon, the whole gang. Not the type of movie characters I'd like to encounter in real life though. If I found out the Ninja Turtles were chilling in the sewers below Manhattan, that would be a great day for me. A real life Godzilla rising from the water to wreak havoc on the Japanese public wouldn't be a boring news day, but not good. There's not a ton of info on this case. The sighting was brief, and the creature disappeared before anyone could get a clear look or photo, but the nickname stuck, and some say this creature could have been the same as the Cagon that I spoke about earlier. The notorious bloop recording. We've all heard of this, but if you're thinking it can all be explained away as glacial ice, think again, there could be more to it than that. For those not in the know, the bloop was an eerie, unexplained sound that was recorded in 1997. when the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked up a powerful underwater noise in the South Pacific. This sound was incredibly low frequency and very loud. The mysterious sound was dubbed the bloop, and nobody knew what it was. Some thought it might be from a massive undiscovered sea creature. But in 2012, the NOAA figured that the bloop was actually just similar to noises made by shifting ice. The bloop was detected several times by an array of hydrophones designed to listen for undersea activity. The NOAA concluded that the sound matched patterns produced by ice quakes rather than some giant sea creature, but till this day not everyone is convinced. Some argue that the bloop's sound patterns are just too specific, pointing to it coming from some yet to be discovered animal. Are there walruses in the southern hemisphere? Well, not officially anyway, but there have been some very odd sightings over the years. Sightings of what have been dubbed southern walruses. Victorian naturalist James Hector, who was no stranger to odd animal reports, collected stories about walrus-like creatures spotted around New Zealand. Hector even speculated that these creatures might be lurking among the Antarctic ice flows. He thought if these areas were explored more extensively, they might uncover these walruses as well as other unknown animals. Thor Heyerdahl, the famous explorer, also had thoughts on this, saying that a Maori myth about a tusked merman might have actually been based on sightings of these mysterious southern hemisphere walruses. And there are other mentions of tusked creatures in the region. Historical records mention tusked marine mammals off South Africa. In Francois Logat's Voyage and Adventures from 1707, Logat described seeing a large red sea cow with long tusks off the Cape of Good Hope. Then in 1852, we have Hugh de Bonley's sighting off Isla San Lorenzo in Peru. He saw a giant tusked seal described as having a seal-like head with two huge white tusks. With all these strange sightings and historical records, could there really be something out there lurking in the icy depths that we still don't fully understand? But walruses aren't the only out-of-place animals reported to show up in the southern hemisphere. Narwhals have as well. Back in 1615, Dutch explorer Willem Schouten had a close encounter when his ship was attacked by an unknown beast. The next day, they found a horn lodged in the ship about a foot long. Then in 1785, a French general reported seeing two dark porpoise-like animals south of Africa. He described them having a horn about 1.5 feet long and noted a high fin, which is odd since narwhals usually have a bony ridge. In 1892, the ship Balena spotted a narwhal near the Bransfield Strait, pretty close to Antarctica. And these were experienced whalers who all said what they saw was definitely a narwhal, or at least looked a hell of a lot like one. In recent years, Antarctica has been the focus of some pretty wild conspiracy theories, one of which is that there are secret government facilities dedicated to the study of aliens and their technology. The remote and inhospitable climate of Antarctica would make for an ideal cover for secretive activities, and some conspiracy theorists point to satellite images and unusual geological formations in Antarctica as evidence of possible hidden alien bases. Some believe that there are massive pyramid-type structures buried under the ice that may have been built by some ancient civilization, possibly with the help of aliens, or just built by aliens themselves who once inhabited the Earth, setting up bases in the South Pole. The governments of the world are rumored to have secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology. Some even claim that these facilities have made contact with extraterrestrial beings. It's very hard to believe, but I'd like to think so. The Ningen is another more modern legend that's caught quite a bit of attention online in the last couple decades. Ningen, which means human in Japanese, is a creature supposedly lurking in the sub-Antarctic oceans. There are two main ways people describe the Ningen. The first is a massive whale-like creature with a humanoid face and giant limbs, said to be around 65 to 100 feet long. The second description is a lot less common, a smaller land-dwelling creature with a big head and humanoid legs. It's said to be pale blue with a big slit mouth and either small or gaping eyes. In 2007, there was a very interesting post made on the Japanese forum 2channel. According to the post, a whale research ship spotted this giant creature near their vessel off the Antarctic coast. The crew initially thought it was a submarine, but when they got closer, it vanished under the waves. Then in 2005, some folks claimed Google Earth caught a glimpse of what they thought was a ningen in the Southern Ocean. Skeptics argued it was just an iceberg that sorta looked like a sea monster, but then there's the 2010 Enoshima Aquarium incident. The aquarium had posted a video to YouTube with footage of the deep ocean, and towards the end, several viewers spotted what looked like this eerie thing. It almost looked like a creature with a big smiling mouth and little eyes. A lot of commenters said it looked a lot like depictions of the ningen. The aquarium later said it was just an unusual rock formation with sponges making up what looked like eyes, but some still find the footage undeniably creepy and even think there could be more to this video than the aquarium is letting on.
At number 10 is Athenia flores. If you thought the idea of bees going extinct sounded terrifying, this virus has the potential of wiping out the very flowers they're trying to pollinate. A virus recently discovered in Antarctica poses a serious threat to certain flowering plants. This virus goes after some species of angiosperms by attacking the chloroplast cells, which are crucial for photosynthesis in all plants. If this virus were to break out and infect widespread plant populations, it could cause catastrophic consequences. Imagine a world where certain vegetation essential for proper functioning of ecosystems suddenly disappears. This would lead to a domino effect impacting other organisms and ultimately human beings. The consequences of such a viral outbreak could lead to a mass extinction event on a scale we've never seen before. It's scary to think about because plants play a vital role in maintaining the balance of our planet's ecosystems. While right now it's been discovered frozen in place, the potential threat of Athenia flores highlights the importance of understanding the viruses, their behavior, and how they interact with our environment. At number 9 is Kaput obus mamos. Another virus among many found in that aforementioned Antarctica discovery manifests certain side effects in mammals similar to the effects of a brain disease called Kuru, infamous for how it impacts the nervous system, leading to slow neurological and physiological deterioration before claiming the life of the afflicted. But unlike Kuru, a neurological disease, this virus is an airborne virus. Now don't freak out just yet. Thankfully, the virus is only capable of affecting certain long extinct mammals, not humans. Yet, the danger looms. Viruses mutate quickly, evolving in just months. Alteration through genetic manipulation by scientists could render this virus a catastrophic threat to humanity. This raises concerns about the virus potentially crossing species barriers, posing a grave danger if it gains the ability to affect humans. The possibility of this virus evolving into a global threat emphasizes the importance of stringent research and caution in handling these organisms, ensuring that measures are in place to protect against any potential future outbreaks. If you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 8, Mimivirus Siberianicum, discovered in a 30,000-year-old Siberian permafrost sample alongside other viri, presents intriguing yet compelling traits. See, size between 0.6 to 1.5 micrometers, which is super small but still qualifies as a giant virus. Notably, it's encased in a protective layer resembling a hairy sphere. When infecting amoebas, it reproduces abundantly, generating 200 to 300 new viral particles. While this virus isn't harmful to humans or animals, its existence raises alarms. The discovery of these ancient viruses together implies that dormant pathogens may be commonplace in permafrost. This finding, highlighted in a 2015 study published in PNAS, signifies a potential risk. As the Antarctic permafrost melts due to climate change or gets disrupted by human activities, the resurgence of ancient viruses might occur. The study's authors emphasize the possibility of these distant viruses once affecting ancient Siberian populations that were emerging amidst thawing permafrost layers. At number 7 is the Megavirus Mammoth, a member of the Mimivirus family, which marks the groundbreaking discovery in permafrost. These viruses, initially identified in 1992, are colossal compared to others, infecting amoeba. Their particle size is pretty minuscule at 0.5 micrometers, enclosed within a capsule of 20 identical triangular facets. The recently unearthed megavirus, like its relatives, shares these unique traits. This strain, M. mammoth, was isolated from a 20,000-year-old ice and mammoth wool cluster found along the Yana riverbank, alongside other viruses. The revival of ancient viruses poses concerns. While these viruses typically target amoebas, understanding their potential impact on current life forms is crucial. The repercussions of rewaking ancient pathogens could be unpredictable and possibly catastrophic. At number 6 is Virus Mammoth, which was found in ancient mammoth wool from the frozen trunk of Underth near the Unveil River, alongside the other one. This P. mammoth is the second strain known from the Virus family. It's a huge virus with a structure resembling a cork, but here's the kicker. These viruses, again, only affect amoebas. Researchers discovered these viruses, calling them zombie viruses because they were retrieved from the Siberian permafrost. In a recent study, they brought back to life 13 viruses from that icy ground, with 3 of them all found in that same ancient mammoth wool. Now, the concerning part is that while these viruses don't affect humans directly, they do target amoebas, and the retrieval from the permafrost raises questions that what else might lurk frozen on our planet's ice. At number 5 is the Pandora Virus Mammoth. Pandora Virus Mammoth, the last one found in that mammoth wool. These viruses, like the previous mammoth viruses found in the same sample, are massive and invade amoebas, being about 1.2 micrometers long and a morpho-like shape. P. mammoth poses questions about ancient viral life and its potential risks. Scientists tested this virus on amoebas, human cells, and mouse cells to ensure it couldn't affect mammalian cells. This is standard practice to understand a virus's capabilities and threats. These ancient viruses, hidden in ice for millennia, raise concerns about potential risks if released. Understanding their behavior in different conditions is crucial for preventing unforeseen consequences. The discovery of these frozen viruses is a reminder of the mysteries hidden in the past and the importance of careful research into their potential danger. At number 4 is the PacMan Virus lupus, an amoeba-infecting virus which sounds something straight out of a video game, right? Scientists dug it up from the frozen gut of a Siberian wolf, which is pretty wild. They're part of the PacMan Virus family, named after the game because of how their protein shell looks like a wide-open mouth when broken. But here's the thing, these viruses could be a big deal. PacMan Virus lupus is the 3rd known virus of its kind, and the first one found in frozen permafrost. Been chilling there for around 27,000 years. This specific virus is super tiny, just 0.2 micrometers in length, which means you can't even see it under a regular microscope. The thing about these viruses is, because they've been frozen for so long, we're not entirely sure how they might behave now that they're out. Studying them helps us understand their potential risks, but it's also a reminder of how fascinating and mysterious the world of viruses can be. At number 3 is the Ked Rat Virus. Deep within the icy grips of the Russian Far East, scientists made a chilling discovery. 3 menacing strains of Ked Rat Virus lurking in the frozen landscapes. These viruses belong to the PTO Virus family, known for their immense size and ability to affect amoebas. Ked Rat Virus Lena is the newly found strain, which was extracted from the permafrost alongside Lena River. Unlike its cousins, it sports an elongated structure with peculiar cork-like formations at both ends, setting it apart in the viral realm. 2 other strains were snatched from frozen soil in the Kamchatka Peninsula and mud flowing into the Kolyma River, respectively. The concern is that these ancient viruses, trapped for millennia, pose a potential threat if unleashed. At number 2 is the Pandora Virus Yodoma. Pandora Virus Yodoma is a really old virus found frozen in ice. Scientists dug it up from icy spots below a lake in Russia. It's about 48,500 years old, and it infects amoebas. This is one of the 13 zombie viruses talked about in that study released in Viruses Journal. Its shape is like a big egg. Well, big, used relatively speaking, because it only measures 1 micrometer long. Scientists figure out how old these viruses are by checking out carbon decay. Radiocarbon, a type of radioactive carbon, helps them find the age of the stuff that was once alive, but for stuff that's older than 50,000 years, there's barely any radioactive carbon left, so it's tricky to accurately date those things. These ancient viruses in ice might be a big deal, but it's not like they're waking up anytime soon. Still, it's important to study them to understand how these viruses might behave in the future. Number 1 is the PTO Virus Siberianicum. A gigantic virus was unearthed from ancient Siberian permafrost back in 2000. As big as a small bacterium, it belongs to the giant viruses group and is visible under a light microscope. Shaped like an oval with a cork structure on one end and a honeycomb-like grid, it's about 1.5 micrometers long. Scientists found this virus while hunting for unknown pathogens. The virus was revived by exposing permafrost samples to amoebas, its only known host. Interestingly, it poses no threat to humans or other animals. Researchers used a method where they introduced amoeba cultures to different samples, hoping to discover viruses capable of infecting amoebas. They named it PTO virus from the Greek word pithos, denoting large containers used by ancient Greeks for storing food and wine. This discovery showcases the resilience of viruses surviving thousands of years frozen in ice. Understanding ancient viruses helps us prepare for potential threats they might pose if released into the environment in the future.
Moving on on to number 7, a frozen astronaut. While on leave from NASA, Carl Gordon Hennies decided to take a hiking expedition to Mount Everest with a British research group called High Adventure BVI, with the intention to test the tissue equivalent proportional counter at different altitudes. This study was going to reveal how people's bodies would be affected, including the way bodily tissues behaved when struck by radiation, which was important for the planning of long-duration space missions. However, unfortunately the mission didn't go to plan. Prior to the start of the hike, Hennies acclimatized in Nepal, followed by acclimatization at Expedition Base Camp in China, and following those, Hennies with 3 members of High Adventure BVI began the hike on October 4th, 1993. However, Hennies soon reported breathing problems on his way to advanced base camp, and when the oxygen treatments failed, they decided to return to base camp. Tragically, that night, Hennies died in his sleep from high altitude pulmonary edema, and his body was left on the mountain per his own request prior to heading out on the mission. Coming in at number 6, green boots. One of Everest's most notorious landmarks seen on the north route is called Green Boots, and it is rather darkly named after the green mountain boots worn by the corpse, who not only marks the spot, but also whose identity is still up for debate. It's unknown when the term green boots became the unofficial official name for the corpse and the area, but it was first recorded in May of 1996 by British filmmaker and climber Matt Dickinson, and eventually, over the years, it became a common term as more and more of the expeditions from the north side encountered the body of the climber curled up in the limestone cave. Now, as I mentioned, it's not confirmed who this climber was, but many suspect the corpse belonged to Indian climber named Zewang Paljar, who was part of an Indian summit attempt in 1996. Paljar and his team members were caught in a blizzard, and sadly, all but one succumbed to the elements just after descending from a successful summit attempt. The infamous green boots and the man remain to this day and serve as an eerie landmark for hikers passing by. Moving on to number 5, Maurice Wilson. In 1933, Maurice Wilson hatched a plan to fly into the northern slopes of Everest, crash land his plane, and then solo climb to the summit. He trained in Britain, hiking and learning to fly planes, before spending the winter in Darjeeling, where he prepared for his climb by fasting and praying, which he believed would be enough to see him to the peak. His plans, however, to fly a plane close to the summit and then hike from there were turned down by the authorities, and so he had to go to plan B. Instead, he decided to start his quest from the Rambuk Glacier. So Wilson set off on foot, but with a lack of climbing experience, a lack of how to use equipment, and putting too much faith into prayer to get him all the way, he soon found himself in over his head. Then on May 22nd, 1934, he was eventually blocked by an ice wall, and the following year in 1935, his body was found in snow surrounded by his blown apart tent. Next up at number 4, David Sharp. After 2 unsuccessful attempts with groups in 2003 and 2004 that resulted in him losing several of his toes to frostbite, David decided his goal to reach the summit of Everest was not yet over. In 2006, he made his 3rd and final journey, and for some reason was determined to make the trek without supplemental oxygen and minimal equipment. Now, it's been debated whether David actually made it to the summit or not after all, but at some point he began a descent, but sadly, he never made it all the way down. David crouched down in the shelter of the Green Boots cave we spoke about earlier, and ultimately succumbed to the horrifically frigid elements overnight. Now, what's especially scary about David Sharp's case in particular is that allegedly at least 40 other climbers were recorded passing by him prior to his actual death, and the other climbers were accused of ignoring the unspoken climber's code of helping out their fellow travelers when they are in distress. Now, according to them, David was already too far gone by the time they passed him, but either way, passing a man actively dying or passing an actual dead body are both scary options if you ask me. Moving on to number 3, a familiar face. As has become abundantly clear during this video, there are sadly quite a few dead people along the route to the summit of Mount Everest. But I would imagine this man's experience would be one of the more jarring ones. In 2011, Rodney Hog was attempting to reach the summit on Everest when he actually bumped into a corpse who seemed eerily familiar. As it turns out, it was. The perfectly preserved body belonged to his late friend Peter Kinloch, who sadly, after conquering the summit, suffered snow blindness during descent and died on the way back down. Although his guides and Sherpas tried desperately to help him down the mountain over a span of 10 hours, they were soon deprived of oxygen and began to suffer hypothermia themselves and were eventually forced to leave him behind. When his friend Rodney found his perfectly preserved icy corpse a few months later, he spent a few moments paying his last respects and then continued on with his attempt. Coming in at number 2, Sleeping Beauty. Now, if you ask me, I think the nickname is a bit morbid, but that really is what this woman was called for many years. In 1998, American climber Frances Arsenyev was joined by her husband Sergei and successfully became the first woman to reach the summit without the use of supplemental oxygen. But sadly, she did not get a happy ending following that. Just 1,000 feet away from the summit, her nearly frozen body was discovered by 2 other climbers, Ian Woodall and his fiancée Kathy O'Dowd. Following the unspoken climber's code, the couple gave up on their own journey to assist her and help her survive any way they could, but sadly they soon realized it was already too late. Apparently her husband Sergei had left after attempting to supply his wife with oxygen and medicine from fellow climbers, but died trying to find her again. And the climbers said Frances's last words to them, "Don't leave me." For years, her body remained frozen in plain view, but in 2007, Ian returned to Everest and brought her body to a lower position to rest in peace with a proper burial.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mimivirus. Back in 2015, French researchers discovered a gigantic virus that they found in a sample of Siberian permafrost. This spherical DNA virus wasn't just any old virus. No, this one was about 30,000 years old. For the virus to survive that long, frozen in ice, truly is remarkable and also absolutely terrifying. There is good news, however. It is said that although some refer to this virus as a behemoth, it is said that the new discovery only infects amoebas, which means that it is unlikely to ravage the planet anytime soon. At least we hope. In our number 9 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? This lake is located in Antarctica and it is so huge it's one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's also quite deep, which only adds to the volume of the lake. It's like the lakiest lake out there, and here's the thing about it. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is just the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we don't really know a lot about what lies beneath it, and the ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in the lake that we know absolutely nothing about. In our number 8 spot today, we have the female mummy. Back in 2017, there was a mummy found in Siberia that absolutely rocked the scientific community. This discovery was so remarkable because deep within the permafrost, close to the Arctic Circle, they found the mummified remains of a woman who was roughly 900 years old. Said to have come from the medieval times, this marked the first woman to be discovered in that area, as previously it had been mostly men. It appears as though the mummification part was accidental, but it was quite a surprise to researchers who had thought that they wouldn't find a woman's remains in the area at all. It is said that all of the bodies found in this area belonged to a hunting and fishing civilization, and this discovery gave experts very valuable insight into their lives and the times in which they lived. In our number 7 spot today, we have Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the highest active volcano in Antarctica, as well as the southernmost active volcano on Earth. Got a lot going on. The volcano has been active for 1.3 million years, and it features a lava lake in the inner summit crater that's been present since the early 1970s. You might be thinking, it's a volcano, which surely is like the opposite of ice, right? But as it turns out, this volcano is like the definition of fire and ice. Here you can be sure to find numerous ice fumaroles, which are ice towers that form around the gases that are released or that escape from the vents on the surface. This creates a perfect home, not for many, but for some persevering and adaptable bacteria and fungi. This gives scientists quite the opportunity to study these organisms that can live in this extreme environment that doesn't really provide a lot of resources.
Number 2, Grasshopper Glacier. Yeah, if you're not a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip to number 1. I won't take it personally. I'll save some bits for that one too. A glacier in Montana is home to many grasshoppers and locusts. Yeah, locusts. It's a fun word. Imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. Ah, what a fool you are. Appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, the mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct grasshoppers. Yeah, they're not alive, don't worry. They're just frozen and then stuck looking at you like this. That's better. These poor guys were traveling to find new life and they must have got caught up in a blizzard a long time ago. Now they're stuck here for another few hundred years. This reminds me of those suckers that have a gross bug in the center, you know? It's like a bug. Why do people buy those? I would never buy them, it's so gross. Number 1, fish eat fish. If you know anything about me, is that I'm not a fan of lakes. Not at all, no. Oceans, sure, if I can see my feet, we're grooving, okay, we're laughing. If I'm looking down in goggles and I can't see shit, I'm out of the lake. I don't even strap them on my head, I just put my eyes in them and rest them on the water. This video went viral not too long ago and it's very real. These two brothers were fishing on Indiana's Wawasee Lake and they saw a pike eating a bass, only both parties were completely still. Both parties were already dead. Both were completely frozen. How epic. What happened? How are they stuck like this? They posted the photo originally and nobody believed that it was real, so they had to follow up and post a video where they actually removed this scene of events from the ice. Yeah, I would think this is fake too. This looks like a life lesson somewhere that has to be told. Just a fish eating a fish frozen, you know? There's bigger fish out there. There's smaller fish out there. Sometimes fish freeze. I don't know, I'll do like 9 more. I don't know what the message is. Number 10, scimitar cat bone. Right off the hop, there've only been a few scimitar cat fossils found in history, period. So already this is a good one, right? We love rare finds. I'm into Pokemon Go, so this is like, oh, a scimitar cat bone. Nice, add that to the collection. The Homotherium latidens lives again. Back in 2011, a bone of the beast was found on a Dominion Creek mining site right next to Dawson City in Yukon. Yeah, you want to make fun of Canadians for living in the cold? Well, joke's on you, pal. We have frozen scimitar cat bones. Yeah, in your face. In your face. Researchers at Copenhagen sequenced its genome and its parents were only distantly related, so this was a rare cat while it was alive, let alone found frozen 47,000 years later in 2011. We love it. Number 9, the oldest ice on the planet. They say you're as cold as ice, but never as old as ice. Let's change that. Let's make a new phrase. Why not? Scientists are digging up ice in Antarctica. There's pretty much nothing else to dig up, so obviously. Millions of years of ice hides in there, so there's of course millions of ancient secrets. John Higgins, a geochemist at Princeton, believes that there's 5 million year old ice still intact. And I want to lick it. I want to see what it tastes like, you know what I mean? Just ready to probe. Weird to say that and then immediately the probe thing. We'll do one or the other. Lick ice and then probe it? I'm like, who is this guy? One group is claiming to have found 8 million years old ice, but climatologist Eric Wolf from the University of Cambridge says, my attitude is that I accept that it's old ice. I don't know if it's exactly 8 million, but I accept that it's old ice. Yeah, scientists are beefing about Ice Age, not the movies, like the age of the, you get it. There've been way too many of those movies, eh? It's like 7 now. Number 8, frozen bird. Back in 2018, an extremely well-preserved bird was found in northeastern Siberia, near the village of Balaya Gora. The bird itself was quite hidden, which explains its incredible preservation. It was found 150 meters into an ice tunnel, and the fascinating thing here, other than of course, you know, oh my god, a mummified bird, is that it looks like it died a week ago, right? If I found this, I wouldn't look twice, to be honest. I'd be like, ugh, and then I keep walking, you know, one of those? This bird froze 48,000 years ago. It's a long time, he's been dead. RIP 1,000 times, my little dude. Studying the bird's DNA has given researchers insight on the end of the last ice age. We love it, we love new info in the shape of dirty old birds. Nice. Number 7, ice worms. This is the Dune sequel you didn't know you wanted. Here we go. Around 24,000 years ago, these rotifers, or real creatures, or ice worms, they live in freshwater environments. They've been on our planet for millions of years, so it was only a matter of time before they came back to life. Yeah, that's their secret, Cap. They're immortal. Researchers have been studying these little guys for a while, and in the past they found that modern rotifers could freeze and then come back to life 10 years later. Yeah, a microscopic worm with a buzzsaw as a mouth can come back to life. The more you know. Hit that thumbs up on Most Amazing Top 10. I'm so scared. A year ago, these Ice Age worms were found 12 feet deep under permafrost in Siberia's Alizaya River. These ones came back to life after 24,000 years. Must be some Tuck Everlasting water around them or something. I don't know. They're built different. Number 4, underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on Most Amazing Top 10, specifically underwater footage. I can't do that, but they love giving me those lists. I get nice and anxious doing those ones. This is footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. This is incredible. This is something we shouldn't have been able to see in our lifetime. This glacier is the size of Florida, okay? So if it collapses, our sea levels could rise 10 feet. So yeah, let's drill a hole through the middle and see what happens. We love it, all in the name of science. This was back in 2019. Researchers drilled 2,300 feet through the Thwaites Glacier and dropped a robot with a camera down. This is the first time in history we've seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true. It's her walking on the moon moment. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor. So you're seeing the bottom of a continent, basically, like in Smash Bros, the very bottom of that floating arena. That's it, right here, underwater. I'm so scared. I feel so small looking at this. Would you swim underneath it, Chris? No, I wouldn't either. I would do this and then go back. Screw that. Yo, it's deep too, and it's like literally like it's like a triangle at the bottom, and it's like you see the ocean floor is like right there. I'm like, this is actually really scary. It gets my heart going. I can't do this. Afraid of lakes and fish and ghosts. Number 2, Project Iceworm. This one has no actual worms in it, just so you know. That was the gross one up there. This is more of a government one. Here we go. As a Canadian, this secret project sounds like the worst one on this list. Ah, it's so cold. I'm sick of the cold. Had it. Back in the 1960s, under the Greenland ice sheet, the US Army started to build mobile nuclear missile launch sites. Yeah, code name was Project Iceworm. And now we're still finding a whole bunch of gadgets and bad stuff there, so they didn't do a great job cleaning up. The idea here with the project is that they would be close enough they could hit targets within the Soviet Union, right? That was the whole point. This project was called Project Iceworm, but there was also another project, a little secret one, called Camp Sentry. This one had to be done first. Camp Sentry was a network of underground tunnels and places for workers to stay, like a kitchen, a hall, supply rooms, communication centers, all good stuff like that. There's also a nuclear power plant, and this was kept from the Danish government for 7 years. So yeah, some secret nuclear activity. We always got to talk about that on Most Amazing Top 10. Back in 1966, the project was canceled because of shifting ice. Or was it? There's still some activity going on over there. No one knows what's up.
In 2007 and 2008, 2 baby mammoths, later named Lyuba and Chroma, were found in Siberia. They were so well preserved that researchers were able to piece together how they died, even though both calves, one about 1 month old and the other 2 months old, died more than 40,000 years ago. Scientists used CT scans to find that the 2 mammoths probably choked on mud after falling into water. Daniel Fisher, a co-author of the study, stated the mud was like a really thick batter that they got clogged in their trachea and they were unable to dislodge by coughing. Basically preserved them from taking another breath. Lyuba and the 1 month old calf was discovered by a reindeer herder. Chroma was found in 2008, frozen upright in permafrost. Scavengers had eaten parts of her heart, lungs, and skull. But both mummies still showed a neonatal line on their teeth, a marker of stress during birth, which helped scientists estimate their ages. CT scans of Lyuba showed signs of what's called a mammalian dive reflex, showing that she fell through the ice into a muddy lake where she tried to clear the mud from her airways but eventually suffocated. Chroma, who had a belly full of breast milk, also had mud in her trachea, but her death is a bit less cut and dry. But according to researchers, it's possible she fell into a river, broke her back, and was then buried in mud while trying to escape. In 2015, scientists in Siberia discovered a baby woolly rhino, perfectly preserved in a frozen riverbank. Nicknamed Sasha after the man who found it, the rhino calf is the most complete specimen of its kind ever discovered. Sasha lived around 10,000 years ago, was about 1.5 meters long, or almost 5 feet, and 0.8 meters high, about 2.6 feet, much smaller than the fully grown adults, which could reach up to 15 feet long. According to Albert Protopopov from the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, baby woolly rhinos are incredibly rare to find, so this was a pretty amazing discovery, especially because it helps researchers learn more about the early life of these animals, which they didn't really know much about before. Woolly rhinos went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Climate change and habitat loss likely led to their extinction, but some scientists also think overhunting may have been a part of it. Around 30,000 years ago in Siberia, a tiny cave lion cub was making its way across the tundra when a sudden mudslide or crack in the permafrost caused the cub to fall and get trapped. The cub was buried in ice, preserving her fur, skin, and organs in almost perfect condition. This poor cub, later named Sparta, was discovered by mammoth tusk hunters in 2017, poking out of the melting permafrost in Yakutia, Siberia. Sparta is probably the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found, said Love Dallin, one of the study's co-authors, going on to say that even her whiskers were preserved. Sparta died about 28,000 years ago, and she was actually found alongside another cub named Boris, who was even older, dying around 43,000 years ago. Both cubs were about 1 to 2 months old when they died, with their sharp teeth just starting to emerge. Cave lions were closely related to modern African lions and lived across the northern hemisphere during the Ice Age. Unlike today's lions though, these were of course adapted to freezing cold weather. In 2020, a perfectly preserved bear mummy was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Siberia again. But anyway, it wasn't quite what scientists expected. At first, researchers thought they'd found the remains of a giant extinct cave bear, but eventually they realized the bear was much younger and from a completely different species. The bear was found by reindeer herders on a remote island in the East Siberian Sea. It was so well preserved that scientists could still see its skin, fur, claws, teeth, nose, internal organs, and even body fat. The remains were named the Aetheric bear after a nearby river. At first, researchers at the Lazarev Mammoth Museum believed the bear was a cave bear, a massive species that went extinct about 22,000 years ago, but this bear was only about 3,460 years old. Turned out to be a young female brown bear standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing around 172 pounds. It was probably around 2 to 3 years old when it died. The bear's stomach contents revealed it had been eating plants and birds, with feathers still found inside its belly, which is incredible when you think about it. It also had signs of spinal injuries, which may have contributed to its death. In 2016, a gold miner in Yukon, Canada discovered something frozen in the ice. It turned out to be an ancient wolf pup, which had been almost perfectly preserved for 57,000 years. The mummified gray wolf, known as Zur, was found in the Klondike goldfields near Dawson City. Lead researcher Julie Machin, an anatomy professor, called it, quote, the most complete wolf specimen ever found from the Ice Age, going on to say all her soft tissue, her hair, her skin, even her little nose is still there. She's just complete, and that is really rare. Using radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis, scientists confirmed Zur died at just 7 weeks old. The remains were especially important because they were discovered in North America, unlike most finds in Siberia, as you've seen from this list, which are harder to access. Machen and her team were able to link Zur's DNA to both ancient Beringian wolves from Yukon and Russian gray wolves, which means that ancient wolves from North America and Eurasia mixed. Zur's remains also showed them what Ice Age wolves ate. The assumption had always been that they mostly ate bison or oxen, but as it turned out, this wolf mostly consumed aquatic animals, much like modern wolves in Alaska. In 2011, members of a tribe in northern Siberia found the remains of a steppe bison, perfectly preserved after being frozen for nearly 10,000 years. The bison was transported to the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, where scientists began to study it. Unlike other bison mummies discovered over the years, this one was almost entirely intact, with its internal organs in remarkable condition. Olga Potapova, collections curator at the Mammoth site of Hot Springs, explained that while bison mummies are not uncommon, they're usually incomplete, saying, quote, normally what you find with mummies of megafauna is partial carcasses, but this mummy was preserved so well that it earned a record for the level of its preservation. The bison, which was probably about 4 years old when it died, looked like it had starved to death. There was no fat around its abdomen, but its heart and digestive systems were pretty intact, even though some organs had shrunk over time. Researchers even managed to extract tissue samples from each organ, and for the first time ever, they found steppe bison brain tissue still preserved. In 2022, a nearly perfectly mummified baby woolly mammoth was discovered by a miner in the permafrost of Canada's Klondike goldfields. dating back around 30,000 years. The calf, thought to be around 1 month old when it died, was a female and measured just 4.5 feet long. Researchers described it as the most complete mummified mammoth found in North America. A lot of its skin and hair was still intact. As an Ice Age paleontologist, it had been one of my lifelong dreams to come face to face with a real woolly mammoth, said Grant Zazula, a paleontologist with the Yukon government, going on to describe the mammoth as, quote, one of the most incredible mummified Ice Age animals ever discovered in the world. The discovery happened when a mine worker hit something unexpected while digging. The team stopped all their work and brought in geologists who managed to recover the mammoth's remains, and just in time because a storm had been rolling in. Analysis suggested that the mammoth may have died after getting trapped in mud while grazing, with grass found in her stomach. In 2018, yet another incredible discovery was made in Siberia. The nearly perfectly preserved mummified remains of an Ice Age horse, believed to have died between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago. Its body was so well preserved that even tiny details like the hairs in its nostrils and around its hooves were still visible. The foal was found deep in a crater, about 328 feet or 100 meters deep, during an expedition in Yakutia. It was around 2 months old when it died. The mummified body was almost entirely intact, with no visible damage. Scientists collected samples from the foal's hair and tissue and found it belonged to an extinct species known as the Lena horse, which was genetically distinct from the wild horses that still roam the area today. This species lived in Siberia tens of thousands of years ago and disappeared long before modern horses evolved. In 2016, biologist Steve Emsley was in southern Antarctica when he came across something kind of confusing. It looked to be a recently abandoned Adelie penguin colony. There were mummified chicks, guano stains, pebbles from nests, but the thing is, Adelie penguins hadn't been spotted in the region for centuries. What Emsley soon discovered was that the penguin remains were far older than anyone could have imagined. Radiocarbon dating of the bones, eggshells, and mummified skin showed that these penguins had been dead for thousands of years. The rapidly melting ice in Antarctica revealed these ancient penguin remains. The penguins had likely settled in the area during warmer periods when the sea ice melted early, allowing the birds to reach the area and build their nests. The most recent colony, which had been buried during the Little Ice Age about 800 years ago, was finally uncovered as the region's ice began to recede. What you're looking at here is a tardigrade, aka a water bear. Now, is this a newly discovered alien species? Well, I wish, but no. These things actually exist right here at home. They're just really, really tiny, which I'm thankful for, because imagine if that alien-looking thing was the size of just even a regular house cat. That would just be horrifying. Tardigrades, nicknamed water bears, are one of the most resilient animals on the planet. They're microscopic animals that are known for their ability to survive in very extreme conditions all over the world. In places like Antarctica, they've been found frozen in ice for thousands of years. And what's amazing about these things is their ability to go into a kind of state of suspended animation. When conditions are harsh, like extreme cold or dryness, tardigrades dry out or freeze and enter a kind of hibernation. And when researchers thaw them out, they can come back to life. Water bears have even survived space travel in this dormant state. This makes them one of the toughest known organisms in the world.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have a throwing spear. A throwing spear that was approximately crafted over 10,300 years ago was discovered by Dr. Craig Lee from Montana State University in 2007. It was discovered in northern Wyoming. 10,300 years ago, holy moly. Just saying that is so trippy and hard to wrap my brain around the idea of people existing at that point. But in any case, this spear at first glance appeared just like a stick, but then after closer inspection, he discovered that it was a dart from a throwing spear. At this point, it is the oldest frozen artifact found yet. It's been a source of inspiration for others to continue the hunt for artifacts that are being revealed as a result of melting ice patches, and it certainly has created a sense of urgency for people to get hunting for these unbelievable items. In our number 9 spot, we have the Yukon treasures. A size 4 moccasin shoe from 1400 years ago was found melting in the Yukon, and my inner shopaholic is super excited about it. So of course I had to include it on this list. Along with the shoe, 2 other items were found: a barbed antler projectile point from about 1200 years ago, and throwing darts from 9,000 years ago. Apparently they were found by a husband and wife in 1997 who were hunting doll sheep in the Yukon mountains when they smelled something extremely strange. It was dung. Yes, poop from a caribou. But the thing is, caribou hadn't been in this area for many years, so they decided to inspect it. Naturally? I wouldn't. Anyways, I guess they discovered that the poop was from thousands of years ago that had frozen into ice, and close behind it were these artifacts that had melted along with it. Pretty wild. In our number 8 spot, we have animal hair rope. While out exploring the mountaintops of Western Mongolia, archaeologist and researcher Isaac Hart of the University of Utah discovered something quite interesting that he felt would truly help with discovering more about the Mongolia people in ancient times. They discovered a finely woven piece of animal hair rope. This rope was first thought to have been dropped in the ice recently. However, after scientists performed some radiocarbon tests on it to see how old it was proven to be more than 1,500 years old. Wow, that's some old rope. In our number 7 spot, we have horn curls. On this same trip, looking for more artifacts, Isaac Hart found some Argali sheep skulls and horn curls from 1,500 years ago, which were stacked in a pile by ancient hunters, and this finding completely discounted some old assumptions about the Mongolian people in the past. They were long thought to be herding societies, but these findings show that perhaps they were big hunters on mountain ice. Wow, sometimes just talking about this just makes me feel super grateful to be alive today. Although we are all wimps now, just going outside when it's cold, I'm already looking for the outdoor heater. Where's the outdoor heater? What are we in ancient times? In our number 6 spot, we have Iron Age Tunic. Apparently, as Norway's glaciers begin to melt, archaeologists are beginning to uncover a ridiculous amount of ancient treasures, and some say it is about 2,000 plus items to date. One of the most notable items, in my opinion, is some recovered clothing that was found. Honestly, not one item is better than the other. They all tell a story from the past and help us better understand how mountain populations lived. But still, I think it is so cool to see that they found some clothing that's approximately from 300 AD, an Iron Age tunic to be exact. That's not that old though compared to some of the other items that were found on this dig that were approximately 4,000 years old, but still, pretty cool. And one of the older items that was found is in our number 5 spot today, which is the walking stick. Now this item also is not as old as some of the throwing darts that were found, but it's so unique and cool that I had to put it on the list. It's not just any old walking stick. It's a walking stick with runic inscription. Whoa, so cool. I actually have rocks with ruins on them at home that I bought from like a new agey store, and I love to look at them. Ruins are truly fascinating and quite beautiful, so I'm a big believer in symbology and the energy and power infused in symbols. So anyways, when I saw this recovered walking stick from the 11th century AD, I kind of freaked out and needed to share. In our number 4 spot, we have arrowheads. This is actually so cool. The entire video has been so fun to research, but finding this out was very interesting. I definitely need to go to museums more. I don't think I knew that I enjoyed history so much. Anyways, in 2003, a hiker was walking in a mountain pass near Sion, Switzerland, when he came across some treasures. Not gold, sadly, but what he found were items that are arguably way cooler from a Stone Age hunter from over 3,000 years ago. They were fragments of a bow, an arrow case, arrowheads, and leg coverings, all believed to be revealed due to the ice in the glaciers melting due to the rapidly changing climate. Pretty crazy. Imagine just going for a hike and discovering some ancient artifacts. I bet you there will never be a more interesting moment in your life. Although fine, the birth of your future child could be fairly special too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Viking whisks. Technically not considered ancient artifacts, but I thought this was cool and it needed an honorable mention. The melting of glaciers in Norway has actually revealed a lost mountain pass, and with it, hundreds of Viking artifacts have been discovered. The pass was discovered back in 2011, as ever since, the glaciers have continued to melt and more artifacts have been recovered recovered. The archaeologists believe the pass was used from the Roman Iron Age 300 AD to the Viking Age 1000 AD. From horseshoes to sled fragments to wooden needles to wooden whisks, all kinds of artifacts have been recovered. One of the most unique items include a Viking mitten and a blue textile rug. Wow, imagine finding a rug frozen on a mountain. Also, it's just wild to think that the Vikings had rugs. All I can think of when I think of Vikings is war, so it's probably just me and my limited imagination due to my limited knowledge of history. In our number 2 spot, we have arrowheads. Over 100,000 artifacts were recently uncovered in a place called Nunalik in Alaska. These artifacts belong to the Yupik peoples who lived there. There have been stories told over many centuries of a gruesome massacre that occurred during the bow and arrow war days, which was a series of long, brutal battles. Up until recently, the area had been frozen in the subsoil known as permafrost. The most notable items that were found were the slate arrow points that further proved the stories that have been told about these war times. Although these items aren't technically ancient, they are truly a wonder for archaeologists to discover, and I thought it needed to be on this list. In our number 1 spot, we have an ancient lunchbox. A 3,500-year-old lunchbox was discovered in Switzerland in the Swiss Alps. No, it didn't have a 3,500-year-old cheese sandwich in it, but it did have traces of ancient cereal. Whoa, some ancient dude was just walking around the Alps eating an ancient version of Lucky Charms. The lunchbox is a Bronze Age wooden container, and apparently the food traces were of wheat and barley or rye grains. The lunchbox was made from Swiss pine, and its rim was made from willow, sewn together with European larch twigs. It was found in a melting ice patch in 2012. That's incredible. Probably my fave find on this list, but anything to do with food just makes me excited. Excuse me as I go pour myself a bowl of Lucky Charms. Feel free to join me if you like.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Arctic hyenas. Only a few years ago, scientists discovered teeth. Yeah, how fun is that? Ancient teeth from Arctic hyenas. Lovely. Now, when you think of hyenas, you would never imagine that they once roamed over Europe and Asia 5 million years ago, right? That's not what we think about when we imagine them scary and drooling in our brains. Remains from these Arctic beasts have been found all over the world, not just the Yukon permafrost. Evolutionary biologist Jack Sung studies prehistoric carnivores, and he knew within minutes that these recent Yukon molars belong to Arctic hyenas, aka Chasmoporthetes. Number 9, frozen treasure. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is a very recent discovery. We don't find these often or ever, as a matter of fact. Yeah, treasure frozen in ice. This sounds like something from Ocarina of Time. I'm so excited. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across a box filled with jewels jammed in the ice. Yeah, hear what I just said, a box of jewels in ice. They had to like breathe on it a bit, melt it up, and then finally pull it out. But alas, once they reported it to the French officers, this box contained around 100 precious gems. Precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees, you name it. The box was worth 300,000 US dollars, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, I'm calling in sick. Game over. Where did this treasure come from? Well, since it was discovered on Mont Blanc, officials were able to trace the lost gems back to an Air India flight that crashed on the mountain back in 1966. The lives of 117 passengers were sadly lost, and because of the conditions, it's been next to impossible to recover anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? Somehow these family gems were able to see the light again, and yes, before you even ask, the owner did return the gems. Only the thing is, 2 families claimed the goods, so someone's not telling their truth, my friend. Someone's lying. That means lying, right? I never knew what that meant. I don't know, I saw someone do it and I was like that sound. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter named Daniel Roche found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier. So yeah, the world's melting, but we're also finding gold, so Number 8, Western camel bones. Scientific name being Camelops hesternus. It's a Harry Potter spell, turns into a camel. Camelops hesternus. Meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. These bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek, just 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when they suddenly stumbled across these massive bones. The last time these bones were while operating, I guess attached to some meat, was 75 to 125,000 years ago. The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding conditions, right? It was so cold that scientists could still extract DNA, and that DNA told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. They were like, hey, it's not working out, you got the 2-hump thing, I got the 1-hump, it's cold, you're hot, I don't know. I never called the imaginary camel hot, but here we are. Hit that thumbs up for hot camels. Number 7, blood red waterfalls. I'm sure you've seen this at some point, so I have to of course mention in a part 2. If I came across this in the wild, I would be quite alarmed. I would ask some questions as well. On the southern side of our planet, there's a waterfall in Antarctica that is blood red. The edge of Taylor Glacier houses this one-of-a-kind waterfall. It pours right into Lake Bonny. Now, millions of years ago, when sea levels rose up, glaciers formed at the top of said lake. So this melting water that's slowly leaking out from, a quarter-mile deep, this water is 3 times saltier and apparently 3 times scarier. When the iron-rich water reaches the air, it looks bloody, therefore scary. I'll put my hands back down now. Let's move on. Number 6, giant beaver skull. So the Yukon permafrost, it's a hot spot. Ironically, it seems, for fossils. Lots of ancient animals stuck in time and in great condition, luckily for us. Scientific name for this one is Castorides ohianus. Sure. That sounded like the closest it'll ever be. This giant beaver was on average larger than us humans. They were massive. As Jurassic Park as this thing looks, it only ate pondweeds, which is pretty hilarious. You would think otherwise looking at it, right? One of the largest rodents in history, and they were probably just really cute, and they ate little plants. 50,000 years ago, they didn't chomp on trees, just weeds. Nice, we like that. Go eat all the weeds. I hate when they touch my feet when I'm swimming in lakes. Like others on this list, they eventually moved north. They followed the ideal conditions to survive in, and that led them ultimately to their icy grave that is now the Yukon permafrost, where we go, wow, more teeth. Number 5, Antarctica Pyramid. Over on our history channel, Bumblebee, I talk about the pyramids of Egypt a lot. Maybe a little too much. Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I had to know what was going on. Back in 2016, a mountain in Antarctica was trending online, and we all immediately thought that it was evidence of an ancient civilization, because that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're all waiting for. We're like, James Webb, please show us something scary. Eric Rignot, a professor of Earth System Sciences at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding, adding that, quote, pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. Yeah, that's all it is, just a natural pyramid. Or maybe it's aliens, who knows? I'm leaning towards the latter of the two. Number 4, 90 million year old rainforest. Back in 2020, while we were all catching up on Ozark, disappointing finale, fossil traces in West Antarctica were found. Now this time it wasn't a giant beaver or a bloody waterfall from back in time, I don't know. This time it was kinda nice. This time it was an ancient rainforest. 90 million years ago, when dinosaurs were once walking around, Antarctica was once a paradise. What a sight to see. Researchers compare Antarctica in the Cretaceous period to New Zealand today, right? It was hot, it was gorgeous, with most days on an average of 12 degrees Celsius, like Seattle, right? Some hot days and then some Seattle days. I love how scientists compare eras with modern day city temperatures. Oh, the Ice Age? Oh, a lot of Regina energy there. Yeah, a lot of Western Canada, very cold, not ideal for dinosaurs. But apparently it was a paradise, so we missed out. So cold.
In our number 8 spot, we have UFO discovered. That's right, in October of 2020, satellite photos of Antarctica were taken that had many people stop in their tracks. Surrounded by ice and snow, and with some ice still on it, we see an object that looks like half of a flying saucer that is also a bit raised, casting a shadow around it. As the ice sheets continue to melt around the world, it is believed that is why it has now been revealed, and it is also believed that this is potentially an aircraft from thousands, if not millions of years ago. According to experts, Antarctica would be a great place for aliens to go to because of how sterile it is, so it would make sense to land there. Of course, this is all speculation and there's nothing further on this discovery at this time. In our number 7 spot, we have the Alaskan alien. On January 3rd, 1989, NASA's Alaska York Station made a great discovery. They found an alien frozen in ice. Yep, an alien, just like you see in the movies with the great big eyes and bald head. Makes you wonder if perhaps the movies are showcasing these creatures the same because we've already discovered aliens and someone somewhere is telling illustrators to paint them a specific way. I wish I was someone that had pull to know all of this top secret information, although I guess if I was, then I wouldn't be able to make this video as I would probably have a target on my back. There is no other information on this discovery as it is considered top secret, but it is definitely a sign that alien life has been to this planet. In our number 6 spot, we have alien eggs. In 2015, it was reported that 2 friends were walking along a frozen lake in Utah when they discovered the most peculiar thing. There was a strange formation in the middle of the lake that honestly gives me shivers to look at. If you are someone that feels uncomfortable looking at a bunch of dots together or eyeballs looking at you, definitely look away. This has the same sort of displeasing effect. Small holes were seen poking out from the ice with a strange formation lying underneath them. The theories around what this is include a UFO landing spot, something that aliens left when they visited Earth, and the popular theory is alien eggs. There were some things there that were slimy, so the 2 friends left them, and that's why people believe them to be eggs. What do you think this is? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 5 spot, we have unknown frozen creatures. More frozen creatures in Siberia, you say? Yep, clearly this is an alien breeding ground of some sort. Strange creatures were recently found throughout Siberia. Many of these unknown creatures were found deceased and frozen in huge blocks of ice. There are creatures that have never been discovered which are believed to be alien, and even a species of dog was discovered that is so old it goes back to 1000 AD. Wow, well, I guess we're all going to have to plan our trip to Siberia, eh? I've always wanted to go on an alien expedition, so this is definitely where I will be going next. In our number 4 spot, we have Frozen on Mars. Okay, this one is like a little bit of a stretch, as this evidence was not found frozen on this planet, but it is evidence of alien life, and it was found on Mars, and Mars can get to a temperature of minus 60 degrees Celsius, which is way past freezing, so whatever. Imagine that this evidence was found frozen, as it could very well have been. I just can't prove that, and I wanted to share this anyway. In 1976, the Viking Mars landers detected chemical signatures that indicated potential past life on the planet, or perhaps present life. An experiment mixing soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients tested positive, and even though other tests done at the time did not test positive, the original scientists and others that have reanalyzed the data still stand by the original finding. There is definitely a possibility of alien life on Mars. In our number 3 spot, we have aliens in the water. In an interview in 2017, ex-NASA scientist Alan Stern spoke about the theory of alien life underwater frozen. He mentions that aliens are bound to exist and that scientists should focus more on water worlds. When he was asked about why aliens haven't been found to date, he was quoted as saying that there are many possible explanations. The great majority of worlds with biology and civilizations are water-ocean worlds. ETs at the bottom of ocean worlds would be protected from the likes of deadly radiation from space, if their planet does not have a protective atmosphere like it does here on Earth, and exploding stars. He went on to speak about how ocean worlds are usually freezing cold, and that these aliens would be living beneath a thick sheet of ice, and that is what would make it impossible to contact them. Fascinating. I could totally see this to be true, as there's so much of the ocean that we haven't even begun to explore yet. In our number 2 spot, we have alien fossils from Antarctica. Whoa, this is a wild one. In 1996, NASA scientists announced that they came upon a meteorite that appeared to be from Mars. A fossilized microbe in a potato-shaped lump of Martian rock was how it was described. It is believed that the meteorite was possibly from Mars and blasted off in a collision and wandered the solar system for, approximately 15 million years before coming to Earth and freezing for a little while in Antarctica. After further analysis of the rock, it apparently contained organic molecules and tiny specks of mineral magnetite, as well as nanobacteria. There is much debate about whether this fully indicates alien life, but a lot of scientists believe that it does. In our number 1 spot, we have a frozen ancient civilization. In 2017, there was a whistleblower by the name of Corey Goad, who claimed that it was discovered that an ancient alien civilization is frozen and buried under 2 miles of ice in Antarctica. Apparently, this discovery was made in 1939 by a German expedition, but it was only until 2002 that archaeologists and scientists were allowed on the site. Apparently, Goad boat originally only knew about this secret expedition because of a USAF officer working in the program, but eventually Goad himself journeyed to Antarctica with the US Air Force to witness this secret project, where they have discovered the ruins of a 55,000-year-old alien civilization. Not much more was revealed, but hopefully in the next 10 years we will learn more about these findings.
Number 10. Dinosaur. When it comes to big things, dinosaurs were pretty damn big. Scientists were able to uncover the fossilized remains of a new and unknown species of dinosaur underneath the ice sheets in Greenland. When the dinosaurs were alive, the Earth was a lot warmer and more tropical, these fossils becoming trapped under the ice when the climate changed into the Ice Age. The skull they found is thought to be a two-legged plant-eating dinosaur of medium size, and they dubbed the new species Issy-Sinique. The dinosaur is believed to have grown to the size of 10 to 30 feet, and the skull they found is thought to be that of a younger dinosaur that had not fully grown yet. They used computer technology to create 3D scans of the head before sending the specimens to the Natural History Museum in Denmark, as they have sovereignty over the country of Greenland. It is the first known dinosaur to have been native to Greenland and is thought to come from the late Triassic period around 200 million years ago. Number 9. Bison. The massive carcass of a bison known as a steppe bison was found by a gold mining family in Alaska way back in 1979. They were using a mining hose and were melting a frozen block of ice, effectively thawing out the creature that had become trapped inside. The bison species is from the Ice Age, and the body that they found is thought to be tens of thousands of years old. Once they were finally able to fully excavate the body, they found other things alongside it, including hair, insects, wood, and different plants. When the pelt of the animal reacted to the soil around it, it turned the body blue, and so the bison ended up being dubbed Blue Babe. Analysis of the body showed it had died 36,000 years ago, a result of being attacked by an Ice Age lion. The ice allowed the creature to be incredibly well preserved, scientists even being able to find pockets of blood in the body. Number 8. Cave bear. This specimen found on an island in the Arctic was a very unique discovery, said to be one of the first of its kind. Researchers found a well-preserved body of a cave bear that was around 40,000 years old. Cave bears would grow to be around 7 feet long and typically weighed over 1,000 pounds in their adulthood. Before this discovery was made, they only knew about the animal from skulls and bones, and had never found a specimen that was this fully preserved. The body that they found had all of its organs still, and even still had its nose on its face, paired with its terrifyingly massive sharp teeth. According to one of Russia's leading Ice Age experts, the discovery of the body was of world importance and is the first and only find of its kind. The body was found by a group of reindeer herders on the island and was then sent around to various scientists to study the life of the animal. Number 7. Horned lark. Alright, some of these creatures aren't that big, but they're still pretty interesting, and size doesn't matter anyways. In 2018, fossil hunters were in the northeastern part of Siberia, known as the Pole of Cold, and they were tunneling into the permafrost. Deep underground, they discovered the body of a bird thought to be around 46,000 years old, but it was incredibly well preserved, and scientists say that it looks like it could have only died a few days ago. Researchers believe that it is the ancestor of the horned lark bird and is the first of its kind to have ever been discovered. It is also said to be one of the best preserved specimens ever discovered, as it was almost completely intact and still had all of its parts. The Ice Age that took place is thought to have generated many new species who adapted, and this is one of them. Siberia is home to a lot of frozen discoveries due to its freezing cold temperatures, and who knows what else is sitting in the ice, just waiting to be found. Number 6. Wolf. The Pleistocene era, or Ice Age, lasted from about 2 million to 11,000 years ago, and many great extinct creatures we've discovered come from this era. One of these discoveries was the head of a massive Ice Age era wolf that was still snarling 40,000 years after it had died. It was found in a cold region of Russia and is one of the first full-sized frozen wolves ever to be discovered. They found it in the summer of 2018 and it was described as having mammoth-like fur, sharp fangs, and was between the ages of 2 and 4 when it passed away. Because only the head was discovered, it only gave small clues towards the evolution of wolves and how they have changed and adapted over the years, but researchers were still able to reconstruct the head using 3D models and get a solid understanding of what these Ice Age wolves looked like. In fact, the specimen was so well preserved that it even still had parts of its brain. Number 5. Lion cubs. As I've mentioned before, Siberia is a place that is fairly popular for finding frozen specimens, and this time they didn't just find one animal, but instead 2 matching ones. They found 2 mummified cave lions that lived during the Ice Age around 30,000 years ago, giving them the names Sparta and Boris. They were found in 2017 and 2018 by mammoth tusk collectors, and one of the cubs was believed at the time to be the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. It was originally thought that the 2 cubs they discovered were siblings, being only a few months old at the time of their death, but research showed that Boris had actually died about 15,000 years before Sparta. Sparta still had her fur, teeth, skin, organs, and even her whiskers, looking like she may have only recently died despite being a part of a species that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. If given the chance to grow up, the cubs would have managed to grow to 5 feet long and weigh almost 1,000 pounds. Number 4. Sharks. Creatures that are found frozen in ice don't always actually come from the Ice Age. There are plenty of cold places right now where animals can unfortunately become trapped, or pass away and then freeze. In Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it has become startlingly common for giant sharks to become frozen in the ice off the coast. A few years ago, they found a total of 4 different sharks that had all become frozen in the ice and passed away. The sharks were apparently becoming trapped in shallow waters during changing weather conditions, and sudden cold snaps would cause them to freeze and die. The thresher sharks that were commonly becoming trapped were apparently not a very well studied species, so the bodies that were found were taken and thawed in order to be dissected and researched. The Atlantic White Shark Conservancy even went so far to refer to the specimens as sharksicles, but probably not something you'd want to eat on a hot day in the summer.
Moving on to number 9, Rainbow Valley. Don't let the cheery name fool you. Rainbow Valley is anything but. The area found along the Northeast Ridge route unfortunately is not a fun stop along the hike, but it is actually a pit of dozens of dead bodies from hikers who did not survive the journey. The area earned its name due to the amount of bright jackets and gear either left behind by climbers or still wrapped around their frozen bodies. And many hikers who have passed it and survived the journey say it is a very freaky and eerie section to walk through. There are apparently corpses strewn across the mountain in this area, despite the fact that Nepal law states that bodies should be removed immediately to keep the sacred sanctity of the mountain. However, it happens so often that it is virtually impossible to do so. According to Strange Remains, other climbers will occasionally attempt to push them to a better resting place, but as they are frozen solid, sometimes that is not even possible.
Number 2. Foal. In the summer of 2018, they found what they called the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. Feels like they say that a lot. Anyways, mammoth tusk hunters in Siberia found the body of an around 42,000-year-old horse foal, incredibly well preserved thanks to the cold temperatures. They say that it was only about 2 weeks old at the time of its death, and they were able to extract both blood and urine samples from it. The discovery apparently pushed scientists closer to the hope that they could bring these extinct creatures like mammoths back to life. I think we should listen to Jurassic Park's warnings and just deal with the animals we actually have right now. I know you might be thinking that a baby horse isn't some terrifying giant Ice Age creature, but full-grown horses are pretty big, okay, and they're actually kind of terrifying. I mean, they basically walk on one giant finger. It's creepy and I don't like it. Number 1. Baby mammoth.
During the Ice Age, mammoths were one of the biggest creatures around, basically being massive furry elephants. This young woolly mammoth specimen was found in, you guessed it, Siberia. This incredibly well-preserved body of a young female woolly mammoth named Yuka is said to have lived around 28,000 years ago, and they were discovered around a decade ago. Due to her good condition, scientists were eager to conduct experiments, and one of those was taking cells from her body. When they put the cells together, they found that they were still active, even almost 30,000 years later, so they managed to technically revive Yuka in a way. At full size, woolly mammoths were usually around 13 feet tall and would weigh around 13,000 pounds, or the same as around 26,000 large oranges, if that helps you picture it.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Europa. We are going off planet for this one. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of this moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a really bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. In our number 4 spot today, we have P38. In 2018, a team of researchers were using a drone with ground-penetrating radar technology when they found something that no one could have predicted. 300 feet deep in the Greenland ground, encased in ice, was a World War II plane. This P38 Lightning fighter plane is actually just one out of 8 that were a squadron. This P38 Lightning fighter plane was actually just one out of 8 that were part of a squadron. This group had all been lost and had crash landings after a blizzard on July 15th, 1942. After locating the fighter plane, researchers were able to then excavate it, but there still remains at least 4 in this squadron that have yet to be located. In our number 3 spot today, we have Skeleton Lake. Also sometimes referred to as Mystery Lake, this place is exactly what it sounds like. It's a lake and there's a bunch of skeletons there. Located in the Himalayas, this lake freezes over in the winter months, but when the snow melts, there are various skeletons around the site that become visible around the edges of the lake. There have been many speculations as to how these people died, and at one point it was thought that these remains were a result of a pretty legendary event where, all in a single group, they were killed by a large and violent hailstorm, but the leading theory has since changed. Now it is said that the remains actually belong to 3 distinctly different groups who all died in separate events. At this point, the real story of what happened here may just remain a mystery that has left us with a haunting image. In our number 2 spot today, we have Luba. This is the name that was given to a baby mammoth. Mummified remains were found frozen and extremely well preserved in ice. Luba would have roamed the earth about 48,000 years ago, which is truly incredible to think about. These mammoth remains were found in 2007, but it was actually a complete accident. The remains were found by a hunter who was out on a frozen peninsula in Russia. But here's where the story takes a bit of a crazy turn. So the man who discovered these remains didn't want to touch her because of a cultural belief that touching a mammoth would cause a bad omen, so he traveled to a nearby town to consult a friend, and this is when they decided to contact the authorities. The authorities then flew out to the area to collect the remains, but when they arrived, she had disappeared. The person who found her knew that someone had likely taken her to try and turn a profit, so he began doing some investigations. Long story short, they found the remains outside of a local store, and this is when it was revealed to them that the guy who had found the remains initially, his cousin had stolen them and brought them here in exchange for 2 snowmobiles. In the end, there was unfortunately minor damage to the body that included dogs having chewed off her right ear, but still the find and discovery was still incredible, and she was transported to a museum where she continues to give people a look into a time on Earth long ago.
Number 10, abandoned whiskey. Alright, here we go. Part 1 and 2 of this list was pretty dark, so we'll kick this part 3 off with 10-year-old McKinley whiskey. An explorer found the crates in the hut of Ernest Shackleton. Inside were these frozen bottles of scotch, all the way from 1907. This may be the best discovery on this list, but it's been locked up, of course. Obviously, such a historical find, but you'll be happy to know a sample was given to Scottish distiller White and Mackay. Yeah, they're currently studying this recipe to try and bring it back to life. Imagine seeing Ernest Shackleton's whiskey in stores, on shelves. I'd be like, oh, what? Okay, get it. Number 9, surgical notebook. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm so interested right off the bat. Maybe I've played too much Zelda, I don't know, but notebooks feel very national treasure to me when you find them. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon, believe it or not. It's over 100 years old and it was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica, and the owner was George Levick. He was a photographer and, of course, a surgeon who traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This expedition was from 1910 to 1913. Now, the book itself was completely frozen and the bindings were completely toast, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. You can still read descriptions of photos that George took at Cape Adair. Like his first observation, all his notes that he took down, we can still read those, so it's amazing. Imagine in 100 years you find a notebook and it's just a bunch of like crazy S's that we used to draw back in school, like those pointy, like one of these hands. Haha, haha. This is Disney Channel, the guy would be like, he nailed it, that was perfect. Number 8, the Glacier Girl. Before you get worried, this next one is a plane, not a woman. I got your back. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland surrounded in ice. Now this was during World War II in July 1946, when 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to, lousy weather conditions and of course low visibility. The crew was saved, but the lockhead had to be abandoned, sadly, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice, and it took years to finally get this plane back in action. She's known as the Glacier Girl, and in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis bought the plane. Number 7, million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in, of course, Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered. We love it. This was under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. Yeah, an ancient flower found at a Cold War military camp. What a headline that would be. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway. Now, I mentioned that project on this channel here before, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen adventure in history, okay? Eventually, the project was scrapped and it was abandoned. Now, cut to 2019, it was rediscovered, and scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old flower. Not what you'd expect to find under a secret Cold War base, He's like, oh, it's kind of nice. The fragments were all so well preserved that it looked like the flower had died recently, not, a million years ago. Studying these plants can also provide clues on our future and where our current plants might end up. Number 3, 3 kittens. Don't worry, they are all okay. Spoiler alert. Had to throw that in because, I care about you. Back in 2020, an oil worker named Drayton Dewish found 3 kittens all frozen to the ground near Drayton Valley. Now, it was mid-January, everything is frozen. This was near an oil well that he'd been working at. On Facebook, they posted about how the 3 kittens were all males, and they were all dewormed, and now they were all living under the same roof, much warmer, with a happy family. So, happy ending, there we go. He got them out of the ice by using coffee to melt the ice. How amazing is that? I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Coffee saves lives. That's it. Double doubles? Ooh, every morning. I was frozen outside before, and then I was de-thawed myself with a nice French vanilla. Number 2, message in a frozen bottle. Okay, here we go. Now that song, Message in a Bottle, is going to be stuck in everyone's head watching this. Best song from Guitar Hero 2, hands down. That and Surrender by Cheap Trick. What a time, right? So fun. Anyways, back in 1959, back on track, a geologist named Paul Walker, great name, buried a message in a bottle. He wanted to make a lasting statement about climate change, so he put this frozen message underneath rocks near a glacier in 1959. And then cut to 2013, what do we find? Said message in a bottle. The message inside was to measure the length from that point to the edge of a glacier, but by 2013, said glacier had shrunk down 200 feet. So the scientist really did show us. He was like, trust me, in 50 years, I'm gonna get you with this. Imagine he put the wrong note in. They open it up, it just says milk, eggs, bread. Is this a grocery list? This is definitely a grocery list. God damn it. Number 1, Ice Age art. Ancient artwork, this time from the Colombian Amazon. Thing is, unlike other drawings found in the ceilings of tombs, this canvas stretched about 8 miles and it was all frozen. It was just a wasteland. This should have never been found. The paintings are even more impressive. They date back to 12,000 years ago. These were made near the end of the last ice age. Yeah, the end of the last ice age, we're doing doodles. Are you kidding me? I can't even go to the store if it's snowing out. I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna order in, screw that. This guy's making art. Miles of art. These were found in 2017, but it was only last year where they went public with said findings. Those findings being paintings of elephants, massive sloths, horses from the Ice Age, snakes, birds, deer, etc. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America. Yeah, is it pregnant women or the origins of the Ninja Turtles? Art, we don't know, couldn't tell you.
Number 6. Yucca the Mammoth. Yucca the Mammoth is a mummified corpse of a juvenile female woolly mammoth that was found near and named after the village Yucca, whose local people discovered it. This mammoth mummy was found as an overhanging ledge about 13 feet above the beach level in a low wave cut bluff that was about 16 feet high. Found in 2010, the mammoth died approximately 39,000 years ago. After its discovery, Yucca spent 2 years stored and preserved in the natural refrigerator, the local permafrost of Yucca. An analysis of the teeth and tusks determined Yucca to be approximately 6 to 8 years old when it died, coming in at about 5 tons. Now, although it's presumed that this mammoth had most likely been attacked by lions or other predators, evidence that the predators had killed the mammoth was not found. In March 2019, a Japanese researcher team led by Kazuo Yamagata, a biologist at Kundai University, worked with Yucca's tissue. Yamagata's team reported that they were able to simulate nucleus-like structures to perform some biological processes, however they could not activate cell division. Yucca is now on display in Moscow, and it is quite creepy to say the least. It's considered the best preserved mammoth in the world, and you can clearly see why. Number 5. Mother-daughter mummies. In 2017, archaeologists found mummies buried in the Zelny Yar burial site near the Russian town of Skalkard. They found 2 mummies, one adult woman and the other her daughter. These mummies are estimated to be 900 years old and are said to be part of an unknown medieval culture. The interesting thing was that the female mummy is the only female in the burial ground, leading some to assume that she was an elite member of society. It's also interesting and creepy because only her head has been preserved. On the head you can still see her hair and eyelashes, and her face has a green tint due to the copper she was buried in. By finding this, the team who found them will be better able to understand the little known civilization that lived in this region between the 8th and 13th centuries. Between the 8th and 13th centuries AD. Alexander Gustav, expedition leader, said the remains were found near one of the 3 monuments at Zeleny Yar. They were buried in a north-south direction, their feet facing a river, the significance of which is thought to be religious. Now, who these people were and how they ended up on the edge of the Arctic is not known, but previous DNA analysis has shown them to have links to Persea. Researchers are currently working to connect the civilization to local indigenous populations living in the region today. Number 4. Fish. The freezing of an animal, insect, or fish can happen at any moment when the temperature suddenly drops and everything begins to freeze. Now, this is what happened when 2 brothers went fishing on a Wawasee Lake in Indiana a few years ago after a cold snap. They made a startling, bizarre, and mysterious discovery. They found a pike frozen in the ice of the lake. Now, in most cases, a frozen fish isn't a big deal. However, the pike died in the middle of eating a bass. The most probable theory suggests that the pike choked on the bass, died, and was frozen in time, the 2 fish entwined together forever. Now, at first, nobody believed the 2 brothers on social media. Most assumed it to be a special effect or joke, but they released graphic footage of them cutting the pike and half-eaten bass out of the ice, much to the surprise of their followers. Now, it's unknown how long it was frozen for, but I can't imagine finding something like that. Number 3. Dinosaur bones. It turns out that many dinosaur bones have been found in the frozen tundra of the Antarctic. The first were discovered in 1986 by Argentinian geologists Eduardo Olivero and Roberto Sasco, who unearthed remains of the ankylosaur. These bones were found on James Ross Island and were bones of a Tinosaura. Other dinosaurs are continuously found in Antarctica as well, but it's not like these dinosaurs were roaming on an icy landscape. Antarctica as we know it only formed about 25 million years ago, long after the dinosaurs had gone extinct. Before that, it was a part of the supercontinent called Gondwana, and it was actually quite tropical. Number 2. The meteorite. In 2021, research assistant Matthias van Gilken was working at the Belgian Princess Elizabeth Antarctica Station when he made a shocking discovery. He discovered 13 black particles at the Ronan Mountains, Queen Maud Land, and East Antarctica. The scientists soon realized it was pieces of a meteorite. They theorized that the meteorite was barreling towards Earth roughly 430,000 years ago and exploded in the sky above East Antarctica when it entered the atmosphere. Then earlier in 2015, NASA scientists found a small meteorite that fell to Earth 13 years earlier, landing in the icy cold Antarctica. Now, evidence suggests that the object contained microbes from Mars.